Life is a series of bargaining and negotiations. So we negotiate or bargain a bunch of things in life, whether we're on our job, whether we own a business, or we're dealing with our children, we're parenting, we're in a relationship, whether intimate or friendship. You're bargaining all the time, give and take. So in this book, How to Get Rich, which I reviewed the fundamentals of in my last video, where it talks about all the different things that the author learned throughout his career. He became an uber millionaire with little to no education. And in the time where it was not, we didn't have the internet, it wasn't really the information age in that way. And so he really made it big, right? And it was his dream and desire. So there's so many good tips in that book. But I wanted to do a separate video on this negotiation piece because I know we're doing negotiations all the time. And even the book, it says, most people are not good at negotiations. We don't really understand the mechanics of it unless you studied it or you read a book on it. And so even as a lawyer, I learned a bit of negotiating in law school, but a lot of it I learned through practice, right? Most of it I learned through practice. And even still, I believe like I could use some help in negotiation. So I always try to brush up on those skills every now and then. And this book was really good. I learned a lot of good tips on things that I haven't heard before. This is like a different view. So if you want to understand like what really good negotiating is and what even is negotiating versus bargaining, then stay tuned till the end. I'm going to go through all the tips that I learned from this book. And I really think you're going to walk away even more empowered to negotiate, and you'll start to recognize when people are negotiating with you and you probably didn't even know it, right? Maybe when they're working you over. So let's get into it. So when is it a bargain and when is it a negotiation, right? So the author tells us that most things in life is a bargain, right? You're not really negotiating all the time. You want to sort of save negotiations for really important things. So for instance, you might be bargaining with your employer to have work-life balance, right? I knew somebody recently who I spoke to, a business owner, who says, yeah, that finding the right employees are difficult. So when you have good employees, you want to kind of work with them. And so what this person does with their employee is their employee works a certain amount of hours so they can get off at a certain time to pick up their kids from school, and then they work from home certain days and come in certain days. So this is like bargaining, right? It really works out for both parties. Everybody gets what they want, and you don't really want to try to negotiate and work somebody over who is really important in your business or important in your life or whatever. You want to make sure that everybody is happy. So that's really bargaining. You're just going to do what it takes to kind of get it done. It's not hurting anybody, and it's basically helping everyone work things out. Negotiations is where there is a weakness on one side. And the goal in negotiating is to find the weakness and ferret it out and figure out how you're going to get things in your favor. So an example that the author used is that he was offered by someone to purchase a newspaper that he had at the time or a magazine that he had at the time before the internet had started or was just kind of getting off the ground, and he knew that this was going to be a valuable thing. At the time, he really did need the money. Was not in no position to turn down offers for it, but he really had a strong feeling that it was going to be worth more. So someone offered him $750,000, he turned it down, and then he got another offer for like $1 million, but he really felt like, if there's two people now coming to me for this particular thing, then there must be some value here. And I heard Master P talk about this before too. He's a rapper, artist, manager, business owner, but he had a long career in rapping. And he talked about how when a record label came to him offering him $1 million to sign to them or sign over his rights or whatever the case is, basically own him and own his career. He was like, now, if you're offering me $1 million, that means that I am worth way more than this. So this was the same particular situation. And so because of that, he understood that this was a negotiation. And he negotiated, so hard with this thing that he ended up getting like 3 or 4 million versus the first 750,000 that he was offered. And he's like, that's when you use negotiations, when it could change your life, when your life could be dependent on it and you could actually, make a huge return. That's when you really want to negotiate. He uses this example where a gnat goes to an elephant, right? And if you're the person who's going to a bank for, say, money to pay your payroll or money to, you want to invest in something, then typically the bank is not going to want to give you that money, right? Because when they see that you have a need, they're the big guy, you're the little person, you don't really have much leverage. But say you are a business startup, right? And you want the bank to invest in you, then they're more likely to kind of want to do that. So you want to use opportunities where you actually have leverage as the quote unquote little person to kind of get what you're looking for. And then you've identified a weakness on the other side. And so remember, the goal is to identify that weakness and to really use it to your advantage. And so the next part is that you have to be greedy, right? So you have to be greedy when it comes to negotiation. Once you've determined that this is an opportunity for me to negotiate, or this is where I need to negotiate, you have to have a greedy mindset. Like, I'm going to win. I'm the one that's going to benefit here. You have to recognize that a lot of times people use flattery during negotiations because they want to soften you up. They want you to like them. They want you to feel like they're your friend. And this has happened to me. I remember as a young attorney, like, I would get fooled by this all the time because I'm somebody who I I receive that. I receive when people are nice or whatever the case is. And a lot of times that would not work out to my benefit. And so as I had been studying on negotiating, I read a book a while back called Never Split the Difference, who was written by I think he's from like the CIA, like a CIA negotiator or something like that. And so that's something that you want to look out for. Flattery. When they're giving you flattery, ignore it. I mean, you can say thank you, whatever the case is, but you're in your mind's eye, you're not feeding into that, and they're not your friends, right? So that flattery is to warm you up, to become friends, and tell me, no, they're not your friends at all. Even if it's with a friend, you want to take that off the table, and you're not accepting friendship or flattery or anything like that with negotiating. You're essentially trying to become numb to everything that's going on the other side, even though you are not showing that. You might be showing like you're receiving it, but inside you're numb to it because you're trying to keep your head, because you're greedy, right? You're greedy and you need to actually win this negotiation. So it's all about you in that moment. Just put yourself in that framework for that particular period of time that you're negotiating. So this brings me to the next one, where he talks about overcoming your lack of skill by setting the price that you are not going to deviate from, or whatever the standard is that you're not going to deviate from when you're negotiating. If it's not money, what is it that your bottom line is, or your minimum that you're going to take, and you're not going to deviate from it no matter what happens on the other side, right? And so this is the part where I often say to my clients when I've had to negotiate on various things, but particularly in real estate, where you want to make sure that you are willing to walk away from the transaction. So when a client asks me to negotiate, or I know it's a time that we really need to negotiate a particular issue, I always tell them, like, you have to be willing to walk away, because I can negotiate as hard as, you would like, or as hard as necessary. But that may mean that you lose a transaction, or you lose the deal, or whatever the case is, because that's kind of what it takes to really win a negotiation. Who actually wants it more, right? Who's willing to be greedy for what they particularly want. So you can't really care about the outcome. You have to be numb to it. Like I said, you're being numb to the feelings and the flattery and all that stuff, but you're also being numb to the outcome. You really can't care about the outcome. It has to be a take it or leave it type of thing in order for you to have a strong position in a negotiation. So basically, you can't be desperate. You have to be willing to walk away. You got to harden your heart, right? And be willing to walk away. Like he, in the book, it explains a situation where he was asking for an astronomical number, the $3 million that I had said before, and walked out of the room, walked out of a negotiation. And basically his advisor was telling him, like, listen, you're crazy. Do you want me to just go back so you're not embarrassed, and I'll take the last offer that they made, and I'll just, kind of smooth it over, whatever the case. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. This is my minimum, and this is what I'm asking for. And then in that situation, he ended up getting it. But yeah, he's like, trust your gut and do not deviate from it so you can get what you want. And that leads me to the next point, where you have to trust your gut. So trust your gut when you know that this is a particular deal, or this is a particular opportunity or position that you really, really want. And so first is to trust your gut and go after the opportunity. Second is to then do your due diligence, right? So one, I've decided this is what I'm going to do. He talks about situations where, like, his team or other people told him, like, no, we shouldn't even go after this, or we shouldn't. But if his gut told him to do it, then he was like, no, we're going to do it. Sometimes, was he wrong? Yes. At least he learned from those experiences. But in any event, trusting your gut is a good place to start. Second is to do the due diligence. You still want to make sure that you're doing your research. You want to know what the other side's position is. You want to research their position and research their company if it's on that level, or if it's like, could be simple things like with your child's school. You want to do your research. You want to basically do your research with what the other side is working with, to the extent you have that information available to you, and ultimately make your own decisions, right? So having advisors like lawyers, research companies or whatever that will help you with this, or maybe you've done research through the internet or a company or whatever the case is. You've done your research, but now it's your time to make the decision, even if you have your advisors do so. So he talks about advisors being good to help gather information, help you know everything that you need to know to make an informed decision, but ultimately you have to decide. And I always explain that to clients too. Like, as a lawyer, I can tell you what I would do, but you have to ultimately decide what to do. I can't say, do this, like you must do this, right? Because that's not my role. That's not attorney's role. It's to make sure that you're making informed decisions and then to help you execute on those things. So it's your decision. Go with your gut and make sure that you have all the information when you're making that final decision before you're signing or whatever, or you're signing off and agreeing to a particular thing. Next is to don't fall in love with any particular deal, right? The idea is that the world is abundant. We have so much, right? God has provided everything that we particularly need. If you don't get this thing, you'll get something else. There's always another opportunity. There's always something there out there other than the particular thing that you are going after. So don't fall in love with any particular deal. And that goes, ties back into the being able to be willing to walk away if you don't get what you want. Don't settle, essentially, right? A lot of times we will settle in life because we're like, oh, there's nothing else, or I really need to get this, or I really want this position or this house or this thing, because we have a lack mentality. So the idea is to have an abundance mentality where if the particular deal doesn't work out for you in the way that you want it to work out, then it's okay. There's another deal. There's another opportunity. There's another way, another avenue. I had this particular thing where I was looking for a school for my daughter, the particular school that I wanted her to go to, or that we had sought after. It wasn't really working out because it was astronomical in the amount that it was going to cost to send her there. And I tried to negotiate with the school and it wasn't really working out for me. And so, fine, we decided, all right, this is not it. This obviously is not the school. And we looked around and we found another school that ended up being a fraction of the price and ended up being even better, right? So a place where she actually was thriving now. So it worked out. There's always another avenue. But at the time when I couldn't get what I wanted, I was really, really hurt and really distraught. And I really was just like, oh, this is terrible, and I wanted to find a way to force it. But luckily I let it go and things worked out even better than I would have thought. And so that happens often in life in various different scenarios. Don't be, if you can't get the ideal setup, if you can't get it in the way that you want it, it's okay. Let it go. Don't settle. Don't take an opportunity that doesn't quite work for you just because you're trying to make it fit, make it work, because oftentimes that's not gonna work out well, right? So wait for your particular opportunity if you have to. The next point is to, yes, show passion, right? Show passion, be excited, be interested, even be aggressive, right? But don't be disrespectful. This is what I got. You want to use those tools on the flip side. You want to use flattery, you want to use, friendship and things like that to warm up the other side. And you can still be passionate and still be aggressive, but you want to sort of level that off with like joking or even self-deprecation, where you're like putting yourself down to make the other side feel better, whatever the case is. So those type of things you should do and could do to sort of soften up the other side and sort of balance your passion and I'm saying aggression, but I'm not saying like be lashing out on people. That's not what I mean. But showing passion, showing that you're earnest in your negotiating. Level it off with flattery or wit or those type of things. Next is to listen, right? Listen more than you talk. And I found this to work even for me in negotiating. When you don't try to fill silence because you're uncomfortable, then you usually will end up having the upper hand. You should allow silence, because usually people don't like to feel that silence, and they may then fill that silence by speaking. And usually the less you say, the better it is for you and the more leverage you have in that particular negotiation. So listening is a really key thing. I've seen this work, and I've read it in other books and things about negotiating. It's an extremely helpful tactic because as humans, we just have that. Somebody wants to speak because it's so quiet and like nothing is actually happening. But that definitely will work in your favor if you can hold out during moments of silence. And lastly, keep your word, right? If you have said that you're going to do something in a negotiation or you bargain for something in a negotiation, keep your word. Do not go back on your word because then you sort of look unreliable and it kind of puts a bad taste in the other person's mouth. And you basically never know when things are going to come around, when you're going to have to negotiate with the same people again, or you're going to encounter an opportunity on the other side where you could use a little bit of help. People will have more honor and respect for you if you keep your word and you negotiate, fairly above board so that your reputation doesn't get tarnished by, going against what you promised to do. And that's it. I hope these negotiation tips were helpful for you. They definitely were helpful to me. Let me know if you learned anything from this video and how you're going to use these negotiating skills. Remember, there's so many things in life that is a negotiation. So you could use this on your job, you could use this in everyday interactions if you need to. And now you can be able to notice if someone is buttering you up to try to get you to do something. Now you'll be, is this a tactic that you're using, right? Your eye is going to be focused on what's going on. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you guys next time.